Excuse me, I have 7 o'clock, so we're going to call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. If everyone will please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Here.
Alderman Stearns.
Here.
Alderman McDade.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Black.
Here.
Alderman Fazzini.
Here.
Alderman Fruin.
Here.
Alderman Lauer.
Here.
Alderman Sage.
Here.
Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. Actually, we're going to start out with public comments, and we have 4 people who have requested to come forward and address the council, and we would generally ask that you confine your remarks to 3 minutes, and I won't be draconian, but I will kind of give you the heads up and maybe make funny faces when you get to that 3-minute mark. We're going to go ahead and start with Carl Woodward, and Carl, would you come up and please state we know your name, but your address? Thank you.
Carl Woodward. I have a work address, 1707 Clearwater, and I live on the east side of town.
What if you could come a little closer to the microphone? Thank you, Carl.
Okay. I've been here before. I wanted to discuss this briefly in my limited time. The finances of the city that I feel the prior council, the prior mayor have done a very poor job on. That includes several of you, in my opinion. On the bond issue, I think it's a good thing to do. Borrow what you can, and let's get a head start on the repairs that are needed before it costs you even more, because some things will cost more if you wait very long. So the smart thing to do is borrow a lot at 2-3% or whatever David can arrange and get going on that. It's clear cut. What I'm really disappointed in is you folks agreed several months ago, when we're $200 million or more in the hole for pensions and infrastructure, to hire a bunch of employees, project a deficit when you should have been getting rid of expense, not necessarily employees, and have a budget surplus. You can't imagine how that strikes me of the intelligence level of the people that voted for that. My goodness, when you're $200 million behind on your charge card and you vote for a deficit, what is wrong with you people? Other than 1 or 2 people, and that doesn't apply to a couple of you that I know that's new here. That bond issue, as I just repeat, is a good thing. If anybody ever wants to call me, I'll sit down with them if they want to put up with my abuse. Jim Fruin's done it more than once or twice, and I don't think I beat him up or he beat me up. And he was very good about that. You talk about the pensions. I've heard you folks up here talk about 3 or 4 methods to catch up. There's probably 10 methods. There's probably an infinite number of methods. But all of them that you're doing is putting the burden on my kids and my grandkids. And I say to all of you, ask yourself, what right do you have to spend money today on expenses that happened today or before and expect people 20 years from now to pay an ungodly amount of money for where you folks have been irresponsible? That's the first question. Once you get past that one, you pick a method that makes sense with advice from David. I hear, well, we don't have the money. Well, you think this city's got $20 or $30 million in 27 years to make the last payment? You can't make 3 or 4 now, but you'll burden the next generation with $27 million? You know how silly that is? These are your numbers. I've been trying to get current numbers, and where you're at now, they're not available. It's ridiculous they're not available. I've tried for months to get them. It's not the finance department. I'd be having my suppliers give me the numbers, or I'd find a new supplier. You folks are 18 months behind the times. Well, gee, we don't know. Well, we'll hopefully have it by the time the audit is done, which last year was December, 2 months late. So all I'm asking is for you to consider the bond fund. I think it's smart to do. borrow a lot and get it going. And please be responsible on the pensions, because you folks have been stalling, jacking, jerking, kicking the can down the road for over 10 years. Shame on you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Bruce Meeks. Bruce? Oh. Hey, man, you know the score.
That's a little prouder tonight.
Okay. Go ahead, Bruce. You got 3 minutes. If you'll state your name and address.
Bruce, B-R-U-C-E, Meeks, M-E-E-K-S, 1402 Wright Street, Bloomington, Illinois. All right, I lost a second here somehow. Our city is still not quite there yet, as related to engaging the citizens by having an openly, centrally access to the public's data. The culture we have inherited from decades of calcification of the city has not yet changed to an acceptable rating at this time as rated by the citizens. Understand that my use of the word City Hall includes past and present councils, management, administration, staff, and the numerically larger group of skeptical citizenry. We are all City Hall. It is this overall skeptical citizenry that has been part of my focus for years, including the past 2 years, while immersing myself, as you all have seen me on numerous occasions, in public meetings related to our City Hall. It is to see all the angles and expand my knowledge base of City Hall with a parallel approach of offering solutions to the council to break the calcification surrounding the problem of skepticism to our citizens, to further support our community to become even more proactive and less reactive. I proposed to the City Hall a website transparency ordinance a year ago, today. Yet no vote at any level of the governing has occurred in the last 12 months. It has yet to see the sunshine of openness and transparency from the citizen's perspective. How ironic is that, don't you think? This is the first legislative step that you as a council can take and vote on. This is about our community, not one individual or any political party. Yet many citizens are unwilling to give up on a citizen-centric governing of City Hall. We are all part of City Hall, and that gives everyone a seat at the table of discussion to take responsibility to help be a part of the solution as a citizen. Part of the welcome mat needs to have open, transparent access to all the data of their City Hall. That is the solution. I hope we move onward and upward with this approach for our City Hall. On the bond issue, my statement is that we should be considering $20 million contrary to what came out of the Administrative and Finance Committee because of the low interest rate. I have high confidence that our well-placed trust and staff will professionally give you a list of projects of our infrastructure that are in need of repair, replacement, and that the numerous projects from that list will be fair and well thought out and meet the ratings that are void of any influence by individuals. It will be the best choices for money we could be going into debt at less than no less than 2.07%. Unlike a lot of the discussions, this directly affects everyone using a restroom, a basement, or moves around this community in a vehicle. We passed a bond 10 years ago for a particular building. I see no reason why you can't pass $20 million for something this very important to our local economy. Thank you.
No, thank you, Bruce. Eric Penn. Eric, would you please come forward? And Eric, would you please, for the record, state your address?
1035 East Front Street.
Thank you. You have about 3 minutes.
On behalf of our construction industry, I am encouraging you to vote for this bonding out for our roads. As a laborer, this year has been very slow for our members. There's hardly any work, and people are not able to maintain their insurance and take care of their families. But this is not just about employing our members. It is taking care of one of the biggest issues in our community, the condition of our roads. I have 5 reasons why I'd like to share with you at this time. Number 1, interest rates are low now, making this an opportune moment to raise money through bonds. Waiting for more study and consultation means risking higher rates, thus creating a taxpayer burden. Number 2, the city's debt is not overwhelming, and to bond for road repair is a very legitimate use of city funds. Number 3, our infrastructure is ragged and worn and badly needs repair. It is not an honor to be known as the pothole city. Roads were a major issue this past election and one that voters are waiting your leadership as our council to take action. Number 4, infrastructure is long-term capital for economic development and our community quality of life. Maintaining our existing businesses and attracting new ones is difficult if your introduction to Bloomington is bouncing down a poorly maintained street. Number 5, construction employment is still low, and putting people to work not only employs them, but turns those dollars around in the local community to further strengthen in our local retailers and our economy. A local construction worker getting a job means that the person can buy school supplies for their children, pay their mortgage, and hopefully have enough employment to buy a new truck or new items for their home. This money is spent locally. In 3 weeks, we will celebrate Labor Day, and all of you have been invited to march with us in the Labor Day Parade. Our theme this year is Hire Local, Buy Local. You can certainly take the first step to hire local by passing this bonding tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Alton Franklin. I don't need to tell you, you know the routine, Alton.
My name is Alton Franklin. I live at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington, Illinois. A lot of things going through my mind here lately. Sometime back I mentioned at one of these little talks 5-paragraph order, and it seems like we're starting to get a handle on the situation and the mission, but execution just seems to be holding off. And I understand that it doesn't happen overnight. But for way too long, to echo some other folks, it's been years that we've been talking and talking about talking and thinking about what we're going to have for our thoughts at the next meeting where we're going to talk about it some more. Comes a time we need to fish or cut bait. You have to, as a part of your mission, you have to have an established action plan. You've got to set priorities. David's brought this up a number of times. Judy's touched on it. There's been any number of the council folks that have touched on it. Jennifer's touched on it. I mean, just about everybody has. But there comes a point that the entire council as a whole has to take on the thought that something has to get done. We need to move on what's going on. Comes to the point with the bond issue, which to join the chorus of folks, I don't just concur, I wholeheartedly, enthusiastically support it. And I think it would be nice if we could do 15 or 20 with what the rates are now, but 10 gives us a good start, and based on the folks that have the knowledge of what our capabilities are and what we need to have done, I think that $10 million is a good figure to start with. But I wouldn't have any issues if there was 5 or 10 more added to that, because we've got to get this stuff done. And doing things takes money. And right now, I hate to use the term, but it's cheap money. And we've already lost money. Rob did an excellent analysis of what it cost us, and we lost almost $800,000 because we waited this long to do it. Let's not lose another $800,000. That's a year's worth of debt service, folks. But that's the name of the game. It's action. And you have to reach a point to where you say, okay, we've talked about this enough. We've got this laid out. We've set our priorities. We've determined our course of action. Step out. Get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Alton. Okay. We move right along to the recognition and appointments. We have oath of office with Steve Kelsling and Ryan Gleason, firefighters. Chief Kimmerling, would you step forward, please? And I believe ultimately Tracy is going to come over. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a couple family members that are going to come around to get some pictures.
Fantastic. Feel free to come around and take pictures and do whatever. Thanks.
Again, Mayor and Council, thank you very much. This is a wonderful opportunity again for myself to introduce the 2 newest members of our fire department. These 2 young men have spent their year's probation, have attended the fire academy and done an outstanding job again, done the city proud in the service. The accolades that came from their academy instructors, and even the job they have done since they've been on the job has been nothing but outstanding. Officer evaluations have been wonderful. These are the kind of personnel that we like to put on the department. They do an outstanding job every day for the citizens. So let me go ahead and introduce them. First is Steve Kiesling. It's no surprise that Steve has chosen to become a professional firefighter as he comes from a firefighting family. His parents, Bill and Dawn Kiesling, are members of the Randolph Township Fire Department. His older brother, Jeff, is a firefighter formerly with Randolph Township and now with the Bloomington Township. His grandfather was also fire chief in Arlington, Illinois. Steve graduated from Hayworth High School. He then went on to get his paramedic certification through the McLean County Area EMS system. He also just 3 hours short of receiving his associate's degree in fire science from Richland Junior College in Decatur and plans to finish it this fall. When Steve is not at the fire department or talking with his family about the fire service, he enjoys running and staying in shape. He used to work at Metcon prior to being on the department and has wedding plans in his future and is scheduled to get married on October 19th to Ashley Robb. Next is Ryan Gleason. Ryan grew up in Chicago suburb of Zion. He attended Zion Benton Township High School, where he was involved in sports including football, soccer, and volleyball. After high school, Ryan attended the College of Lake County for 3 years and earned associate's degrees of applied science in both fire science and emergency medical services. During the same time, he attained his paramedic license from the North Lake County EMS system and worked at Winthrop Harbor Fire Department as a paid on-call member there. Through Winthrop Harbor, he received his Firefighter 2 certification. Other than fire service, his hobbies include playing the drums, which he's done for 13 years now, fishing, hunting, and sports, including Frisbee golf. I'd like to welcome the two newest members of the Bloomington Fire Department to come and take their oath of office.
I'm happy to shake your hand, but not yet.
I pointed out they're go-getters. They want to get out and get things done. So.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me, and when I say state your name, actually say your name. I state your name.
I, Ryan Gleason,
Having been appointed to the position of firefighter in the city of Bloomington, in the county of McLean, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the position of firefighter according to the best of my ability. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Kimmerling. Thanks. We also have a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Finance Reporting Award from the Government Finance Officers Association for fiscal year 2012 in our comprehensive annual financial report. And I will turn this over to City Manager David Hales.
Mayor, if I could, I'd like to postpone this. Unfortunately, the certificate and plaque hasn't arrived yet. We thought we'd have it, so I'd like to wait and present that in the future. And I'm also going to have Patty Lynn bring in her chief accountant and a few others to recognize their fine work on the annual financial report. So we'll bring that back to you when the plaque and certificate comes in. Thank you.
It would be awfully awkward if I were to insist on going ahead with this, wouldn't it? Okay, so, all right. We have a consent agenda from items 7A through U. Are there any items that any member of the City Council would like to have removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion? Alderman Lauer.
Yes, 7G and 7F, sir.
Okay, 7G and 7F, as in Frank. Okay. Any others? Alderwoman Stearns.
I believe it's 7H at the Ashley Furniture.
7H, Alderwoman Stearns. Okay, anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Mwilambwe,
Second.
second by Alderwoman McDade. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
For both the consent and regular agenda, I do not have any personal or business interest in any of the listed items, nor have I received any financial benefits from any of the parties or organizations referenced in these specific agenda items, and I vote yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda is passed. We'll move right along to item 7G. Oh, excuse me, F. Alphabetical order. Here we go. All right. Thank you to the librarian for correcting me there. Item 7F, Alderman Lauer, you had concerns or questions?
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time out at Holiday Park yesterday, pulled some of the tiles up on the corners and looked around, and it just doesn't appear to me that those tiles can't be repaired and replaced as is for a much less expense. I realize I'm nickel and diming, but I'm going to start to nickel and dime here a lot more as we need to. So this is one of the places I'm going to start. I want to know why we can't replace the underpinnings. It looks to me like it might be some pressed wood that was treated or covered in a coating commercially. I'm wondering if a guy couldn't just bring in some good old tongue and groove treated lumber and make it last another 15 years. I would just, on a supposition, estimate that maybe we could do it for maybe $10,000 or less.
Do we have a comment or maybe turn to John Kennedy?
Yeah, let me ask John Kennedy, our Parks, Recreation, Cultural Arts Director, to come forward, and let me have you kind of first address that, and I might add on see how far you get in your answer. So.
Sure, thank you. I don't know that I quite understood maybe the question there. The failure of the tile, there were really two pieces to it. One is the separation of the seams is one issue. The bigger issue is the failure of these rubber stanchions at the base of these rubber tiles. They have failed at the where they connect with the bottom side of the tile. It's a one-piece manufacturing process that Soft Surfaces, the manufacturer, creates. We had many similar issues at Miller Park that created a liability situation for us. This particular tile that we're seeing the failure in at Holiday Park is called the soft tile, and it's the original design by this manufacturer. They have since come out with a much better, more durable, longer-lasting product called DuraSafe that we feel will be the safest alternative. We are hesitant to remain in the long term with this soft tile product, worried about the stanchion failures and what possible liability we may have.
Okay, well, thank you. I didn't see any of the stanchion failures, but I didn't pull all the tiles up either. I just went along the edges. I could see where, the seams had come apart, and it looked to me like it could, be remounted and put back together. I wasn't aware of the stanchion failure.
Sure.
Is there any other way we could come up with a solution to this without spending that much money?
Solving the seam issue could be a lesser expensive in the short term, but we're not very confident in the long term and the liability risk we would face with the stanchions.
I understand the liability issue, yes. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve this? Moved by Alderman Mwilambwe. Is there a second to this? Moved by
Second.
Alderman Fazzini. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stearns.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Okay. We move right along to item 7G, which is the analysis of the bid for Ford. Alderman Lauer.
Again, I'm looking at the cost savings. I'm wondering if we couldn't extend the life of the current unit. It's not even to 100,000 miles. In the commercial industry, that E450 unit is used extensively beyond 100,000 miles. I'm wondering if we couldn't, in lieu of the fact that we've got a lot of expense at our plate here, extend the life of this thing and use it. I'm sure it's been on a very good maintenance program, and if these trucks are maintained properly, they can last a very, very long time. Do we have anybody that can talk and help us to understand
City Manager
this?
David Hales.
Yeah.
You want
Let me have Jim Karch, Public Works Director, come forward, but also John Kennedy, if you would also assist with this, and whoever wants to go first.
Well,
Ms.
you know,
Kennedy.
I'll try my best. This vehicle, we had discussions with our fleet maintenance superintendent. It's his recommendation, the amount of repairs that have been needed on this vehicle, that it is most cost efficient to replace it now. Based on the number of mileage that it's going to be incurring, that the fact of the passengers that it does haul, and there are many planned out-of-state trips scheduled here coming up on for different trips. It was his recommendation that this would be the best time economically to replace the vehicle. I can't speak to I'm not the fleet expert, so I can't speak to the details of those. I'm not sure if Jim,
do you have anything else
could
to add?
improve upon that or not.
No. Well,
The only thing I would add is this is part of an annual process that we always go through. We always evaluate every piece of equipment. You have to look at not just what it's used for, is its time up? That's one of the things we've really gotten away from, a set specific time that this vehicle has to be replaced in, or a set number of mileage. What we look at is also, you know, how is it performing? What issues is it having? Is it able to keep the operations going? And when we've seen issues repetitively with this piece of equipment, that's why it's coming to you. Normally, you'll see pieces of equipment a lot of times that they do have a lot longer life on them. This is unusual for you to see one with this low mileage on it, and because of the issues they've seen with it, that's why it was recommended this year. But it's a very good point, and it's something we're always aware of.
other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Mwilambwe. Is there a second? Second. Second by Alderman Fazzini. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on this item?
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Yes.
Alderman Stern.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Freund.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along. Item 7H, Ashley Furniture, assignment of sales tax incentive, Alderwoman Stearns.
I wanted to clarify, this is simply an assignment of the incentive that we've already granted to another party. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I voted against this originally, but I will vote for the assignment because it's already been approved by City Council. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Mwilambwe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Mwilambwe. Alderman Stern.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Freund.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Motion carried. We move on to the regular agenda. And item 8A, petition submitted by H.L. Bloomington LLC and Hunman Management for the special use permit on Exton Drive. Is there a motion related to this?
I'd like to make a motion that we deny this request.
Okay, Alderman Mwilambwe, your motion is what?
To deny the request.
To deny this request. Is there a second to the motion to deny the request?
I'll second.
Alderman Sage, second. So that will begin the discussion. The motion is to deny the request. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, just because of the time, can I see Who would like to speak on this? We've allocated approximately 25 minutes so I can have an idea of how many minutes to allocate to everyone.
I do.
Okay, I would assume that. Alderman Mwilambwe, anybody else want to speak? Alderman Stearns, Alderman Fazzini. Okay, and we'll go in that order from my right to left.
Sure.
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Sure. Thank you. Well, this is something that I did not take lightly. I did spend quite a bit of time on this information. I went out there a number of times. I've listened to the concerns of the residents, but I've also listened to the arguments that were made by the developers of the project. And there are quite a few things that were thrown out in terms of what those concerns would be. There are times people talked about redistricting, the school situation. People talked about traffic as another issue. What it really came down to for me was simply the lack of recreational space for children in the area. I'm assuming many of you, either in the audience or on the council, have been out there and have seen how congested this seems like. I looked at for example what really convinced me was the fact that in the Wingover alone, which is the development right next to it, you do have the latest estimates are around 200 children, if not more. So in my opinion, with this project on Extum, with 88 apartments, this could put the number to more than 300. I certainly understand, just looking at the Wingover itself, that I'm sure the developers put a lot of work into it. It looks nice on the outside, but what it comes down to for me is the children in the area. I just think that they do not have enough recreational space. Having been out there a couple of times, and again, I'm not blaming anybody for this. I've witnessed kids running in the parking lot and sometimes biking or spilling over in McGraw Park subdivision. So in my opinion, adding another project on top of that would add to that congestion and the lack of recreational space. There's a couple of things that I've also heard, is that, well, maybe we should wait until Cornelius is completed, or once Cornelius is completed, things will be a little better. So in my opinion, I do think the residents in the area have waited for quite a bit of time, for more than 10 years in some cases, to see Cornelius completed. So I think, we can wait for a year, a couple of years, I don't know, to see how the area further develops. And furthermore, I understand that the area is seeing quite a bit of activity. So in that sense, I think it may not be too long until we see, and I'd like to see what the impact of the development or the completion of Cornelius would bring to the area, and if that in fact changes the patterns of use of the recreational space in the area. If people have access to McGraw Park, I think it might change things a little bit, but generally I like to be patient, so I think we can wait for a little bit and see what happens. So it's for those reasons that I personally can't support the project, and I've heard a lot from the residents about it. So thank you.
Excuse me. Alderwoman Stearns, did you want to speak on this? Okay, again, everybody about 3-4 minutes, just roughly.
Just really briefly, because obviously it's Mboka's ward, and he certainly spoke for his constituents. In my view, this is somewhat of a common sense issue to someone who drives out there. And as some of the members of the zoning board commented, I think Jim Simeone, and I'm not sure, a couple others, it's hard to even imagine that anyone planned such a tiny road outlet for a huge, what appears to be a really large subdivision, and then to add this kind of volume. To me, just looking at it, I was kind of appalled when I really saw it, that there's only one road there, and it's a small one. To me, this is really unfortunate because I know the developers have worked hard and they have, you know, a reasonable idea, but because of the planning that and somehow, however this came about, it doesn't seem to support at all the kind of volume that's already out there. And finally, we've heard, I think, pretty loud and clear from a lot of residents out there. I think they made some kind of an appeal to the zoning board and such, but the zoning board, of course, is not, you know, that's not their elected representatives. That's not their city council. We are. And what I've heard from them has been, you know, almost, I mean, frantically appealing for a sane and safe neighborhood and asking us as their elected officials to hear them. And so as much as I don't like to turn down development, and as much as regard as I have for the developers, I have to go with the neighborhood. And I think that's supporting strong neighborhoods, which is also a link. We've got a link here to growing the local economy. Well, I think strong neighborhoods, here's a perfect example of where the strategic plans are fine and all that, but how do you interpret them? To me, I interpret supporting these folks as supporting strong neighborhoods, and that's the reason I will be voting along with Mboka. Thank you.
Was there Alderman Fazzini?
Thank you. We have a typical what's best for the city and what's best for the neighbors situation, and these come up frequently. I think we have a zoning board of appeals that is charged with the responsibility of making that determination, and it did so not once but twice. I think if we're going to not support the zoning board, then we probably ought to consider replacing it. If this area doesn't get apartments, it's going to get businesses. And if it gets businesses, we don't know what they're going to be. They may have more traffic than the apartments are going to have. We just don't know. I'm going to go with supporting what is best for the city and vote against this motion.
Alderman Lauer.
I'd just like to make a few short comments here. I've heard from both sides on this issue. I've actually heard from several suppliers. We are in an era where we're not really realizing a plethora of construction projects and growth in the city. And this is one that the developer is staunchly trying to invest. So keeping that in mind, I think it's important to understand that if we're going to have economic development, certainly we need to have planning, but we also need to encourage the development. I'd love to have that apartment complex in Ward 1, by the way. Okay. I was also, I can kind of bring another, maybe a little bit different perspective to the B1 that was planned there. You and I, Mr. Mayor, talked at length about this yesterday. Was involved with trying to make sure that that was B1 because of the airport and the noise abatement issues and the safety of citizens involved. We need to be very aware that Alderman Fazzini is exactly right. There will be businesses, and they may not be that friendly to the noise environment. One of the things that was discussed initially when we started to talk about developing that area was an air freight forwarder, which would include a number of large aircraft as well as trucking in and out of that neighborhood. And that would happen 24/7 and would not be at friendly hours when the neighbors would be awakened, and it probably would be in violation of that new noise ordinance that I didn't like so much that we talked about several weeks ago. So these are all issues that we need to kind of keep in mind. It's not likely that we'll ever have single-family homes in that area.
Thank you. And just for the record, I believe it was legal counsel recommended that we clarify that we have consistently received emails from people from the neighborhood on this in terms of communication. Just again, we're being transparent about that. So I guess at this point, Madam Clerk, I wonder if you would call the roll. What we have here is if this is voted down, that means then we need a motion to approve, because this is a motion to deny. I'm sorry, Alderman Sage.
Just to clarify,
Of course.
because it's different than the recommendation. So a yes vote is to deny.
Correct. A yes vote, thank you, Alderman Sage. A yes vote would be to deny the special use permit. If that passes, then it's denied. If the other outcome is, if it fails to get 5 votes, then we would entertain a motion to approve. Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Yes.
Correct.
Alderman Stern.
Aye.
Alderman McGay.
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
No.
Alderman Fruin. Alderman Lauer.
No.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Passes
Okay.
6-3.
Motion passes 6-3. Okay. Now, we move along to another non-controversial item. We have conceptual approval of a $10 million street resurfacing bond and direct the city manager to proceed as necessary. And I'm going to make some remarks on this, and I won't take my time away from the time that we allocate for council debate, which is 25 minutes. And I just want to clarify, there are some procedural issues here, and there are some substantive issues. Regardless of how people feel about the substance of this particular proposal, I'd like to talk about the procedure and what we've done. Essentially, I think other than our internal, as we've considered this proposal, some of our internal issues, I think we as a council are at least reconsidering the efficacy of committees, and we're going to revisit that. But other than the internal procedures within the council, I would hope that the citizens of Bloomington realize that this is the beginning of a new era of open government and transparency, and the way that we've done this, the way that it's been vetted. And specifically, if we go back, I know that the process of issues, of course, of street resurfacing have been around for years, and the council has stepped up to the plate. We've had $4 million allocated in this current budget cycle, and that's a lot, under the circumstances. And so that's clearly the case, and there have been many other efforts on street resurfacing. But the entire 10-month campaign last year for mayor and city council was a really quite thorough vetting of street resurfacing issues. I talked about it the day I announced, all the way up to the election night. Many of the other candidates who were successful and those who were unsuccessful certainly knew that. One of the things that we can certainly say is if you went door to door, and I did hundreds of hours in all the wards, any 2-hour period, and I often would do 2 to 3 hour periods and then try to have lunch and then go forward, but any 2 or 3 hour period, one of the things I would ask people is, what are your concerns about the city of Bloomington? The number one thing, bar none, any 2-hour period, any ward, any time, was fix our streets. And that was loud and clear. Now, again, there have been many other proposals, but the process during the campaign, I think, has certainly educated many of us to hearing it door to door, hearing it from community organization to community organization. One of the things, I had several different kinds of proposals. One was to take some of the money from our reserve and a few million from the reserve. There are some issues, of course, associated with that. When it comes to fixing streets, there ain't no free lunches, right? We have to figure out some way to do it. And there are a variety of different ways. And the one that ultimately, the day after the election, I began to work on, and some of the other council members have talked about it in the past as well, was to have a major road resurfacing bond, right? And in fact, I spoke with David Hales the day after the election. We had a couple-hour meeting about all kinds of things. This was one of the major topic areas. In addition, in the next 12 days after the election, I spoke with all of the city council members. Took a while for us, of course, to coordinate our schedules. Now, at that point, I didn't have a specific dollar amount, but I said, this is certainly something that was very high priority. This is the type of thing that we need to move forward on. During that same period of time, I had spoken with David Hales and Jim Karch about some of the logistics. And so the way that this $10 million figure came about is there were a lot of them thrown around. In fact, actually, we've had some people suggest maybe we should do 15 or 20 million. Some of those were thrown out, 5 million. Essentially, where 10 million comes from is that's about, according to Jim Karch and others, that about all we can do in a given year in a given season. And so we moved forward with that. From the very beginning, though, that is from the very first press interviews I did, including the joint press conference I had with Mayor Chris Coos, by the way, who is joining us from Normal. Glad to see our partner here. We talked about streets and infrastructure. And of all the community organizations that I went to, every place I went, especially by the end of April, I had a specific dollar amount. I unveiled this. I talked about it, entertained questions, concerns, issues throughout the community. And that included, let's see, I'm trying to go here to find all the different groups that I spoke to. I had a list. You probably don't want to hear them all. But, the Bloomington Normal Association of Realtors, the Kiwanis, the Rotary, McLean County Republicans, every neighborhood association that I spoke to, the Economic Development Council, the Chamber of Commerce twice, the laborers, the building trades, Bloomington ministers, the Indian Americans of McLean County, the country financial executives and insurance agents, our firefighters, our public service workers, the Blono Bike Group, essentially every place. I took this just like I said that I would, that I said that when I ran, that the mayor should be a strong advocate if he believed that there was policy change that was really important for the community. And that's what I did. I tried to take that message throughout all parts of the community. In every single press interview I did, every time I was on WJBC, every 2 weeks, every time I was on Cities 92.9, every 2 weeks, and in all of the different interviews with WMBD and the Panagraph, WHOI, WEK, there's been an extensive amount, certainly, of media coverage. The first town hall meeting that we had a couple months ago in Northwest Neighborhood Association, which is Ward 7 and Alderman Scott Black, that was the main topic and main concern that people had, street resurfacing. When I went with Alderman Sage to the Luther Oaks, it was basically a variety of different kinds of questions. One of the things that I did is mention the road resurfacing and entertained some questions about that. So pretty much everywhere I tried to be as clear. This was on the table. This is what we're considering. This is why. Do you have any other ideas? Because we should be moving, and we should be moving quickly. And the reason why time is even more of the essence, in addition to the fact that obviously we had this thing called an election, but we also have the nature of bond market is changing. Interest rates are going up. And as Alderman Fazzini said, if we had floated this bond in May, that was not an option, of course, but just that's when the interest rates began to rise. It would have cost us $800,000 less than today. And I bring up the procedural issue and the substantive issue. Obviously, I'm supportive of this, but even if you're not supportive of this, I think it should be an indication that we are operating in a different environment. We are more open and transparent as we move forward. The voters in the last election made that clear because I campaigned on openness, transparency, and an activist mayor. And it's not just my vote totals. If you add Lex Green's, and Lex and I differed on some things, but he was basically saying the same thing. We need a new direction in the city. The way that we have been doing business and making policy in the past is not acceptable to the future. Those vote totals were overwhelming citywide and in every single ward. And we are beginning to make that change. So regardless of how you feel about the bond issue, this is the beginning of a new era, and I hope that everybody in Bloomington can be proud of that and continue to stay involved. In addition to that, of course, the public participation. We had every single week of 3 months of mayoral open houses. Streets came up every time. Twice it was the major conversation. This past Friday, we had a couple dozen people here, and there was no opposition. And other than some people, some of whom spoke tonight, wondered why we weren't going for more. And we explained why that was the case. So we've had a thorough vetting. We've had 2 waves of our committees internally, and that's an issue essentially from the council's perspective. We did have 2 waves of the Administration Finance Committee considering this proposal. One was a couple of months ago, and then the other was in July. So it had gone through twice. The reason why it went through twice is that the first time, just by coincidence, Alderman Mwilambwe, who was a member, was not there, and we wanted to bring it back for more information and allow him to weigh in. So we did have a 3-0 vote the first time and a 4-0 vote the second time. The packets obviously went out to the public, went out to all the city council members, in as much as possible trying to have an open conversation about this. And so mainly I wanted to address process. I do think it's critical for us to act and act tonight. If we really are concerned about pensions, we should vote for street resurfacing tonight, because it'll cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably less than if we do it in a year from now. If we're concerned about sewers and other things, then we should act tonight. Put another way, if we don't act tonight, if we wait a year, we're going to have to raise taxes or raise fees on citizens or make budget cuts on the order of several $100,000 that will get us the purchasing power we have now. So I would urge us to act. Our citizens, I think from the last election, made it clear they want us to act. They deserve us to act, and I would urge the council to support this. And again, I won't take my remarks away from the 25 minutes that we have allocated to this. And I bet there are a lot of people who want to speak on this. So if I could see a show of lights, who'd like to speak? Okay.
Need a motion.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. Could I have a motion for approval? Alderman Fazzini, excuse me. You're the chair of the committee as well, I suppose.
Yes, I'll make this as chair of the Administration and Finance Committee. I'd make a motion that we issue a $10 million bond payable over 10 years for streets and sewers.
Okay, just as a clarification, there are two slight differences from the version that was reported out of the committee. It's a more aggressive repayment schedule.
This
The
is,
committee
instead
said
of 15 years, it's 10 years, and instead of only streets, it includes some money for sewers to be determined.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, second, Alderwoman Stearns. Okay. Now, can I have a show of lights of who'd like to speak on this? Alderman Lauer, Sage, Stearns, McDade. Okay, pretty much everybody. Okay. Schmidt and Fazzini.
Everybody.
And you too, Scott. Okay. Okay. Everybody. Okay. Oh, and you too. All right. Okay. So we want 9 people to speak. We've got about 25 minutes. Let's say, can we have it about 3 minutes? I know that there's about 3 minutes apiece. That'll put us a little over, and we might want a little bit of rebuttal. So let me start with Alderman Lauer at that end, and let's just go from left to right.
I'm just going to reiterate part of what the mayor said. It's a resounding topic that came up during my lengthy run for my seat. The folks in Ward 1, I can't tell you that there was even one person that did not bring up the street issue. Obviously, there are a number of issues that are underlying both physically and maybe not so tangibly when we go to talk about this. But one of the things we need to really keep in mind is that in order to get this done, and I know that many of you have more experience than I do with this, but in order to properly plan for a construction project like this, you've got to have a spool-up time. Not only does the financing have to be in order, but we have to know that the financing's there, the plan is there, and then physically we have to be able to make that happen. And there's a number of months that it takes to do that. And so I'm pro this. I wish we didn't have to, quote-unquote, take a loan out to do it, and that's what we're doing here. But since there's not as an aggressive plan on the table, I'm pro this bond issue.
Okay. Alderman Sage.
I need to ask a question or two about the issue itself before I make some comments, and so I don't want that to take away from my time. My question is, this has repeatedly been presented and sold, if you will, as a street resurfacing plan. And now all of a sudden here in the 11th hour, I hear sewers have been brought in. And so I have some concerns about the disconnect or the discrepancy there. Okay? All along, this has been presented as a street resurfacing plan, not an infrastructure plan. Okay?
I can actually answer that question.
And then the other question I have is that am I overlooking something in the materials? Have we identified which streets we're going to do this with?
I can actually address two of those. The second one's actually perhaps just a little easier. There is a plan, I believe Jim Karch was working on it, and I spoke with David Hales a little earlier today. There was some reluctance to release that just because there's still lots of logistical issues. Clearly, we don't want to pave over streets.
Sure.
That we're going to have to tear up to replace sewers, right? So it does exist, and it's beyond a preliminary stage, but it wasn't laid out because it's still a work in progress, and we didn't know if the council would approve this.
Okay.
Right. And then the other question, if I'm not mistaken, my conversation with Alderman Mwilambwe over the weekend, he had asked that we allow a little bit more flexibility because there might be situations, if I'm stating this, where there might be a really important road, but there needed to be a little bit of sewer work done to it, and in the way that this was stated, there wouldn't be any flexibility for the administration to do that. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. That's fair.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Again, I won't take that away from your time.
My question my concern then goes back to this 11th hour change in the way this has repeatedly been presented, marketed and sold, if you will, as a street resurfacing plan. So I appreciate the clarification. Let me move quickly through my concerns. We have concerns now with public safety. We have been working diligently trying to address some fire response times in Northeast Bloomington for some time. We've completed a strategic review of our department, and we have diligently explored some collaboration with the town of Normal. Both of those issues have been resolved, and now it's back in our hands. So that is a competing priority with this. These next two are related. The state of Illinois struggles with pension reform. Each passing day goes there. A more sense of urgency and desperation sits in. I do not believe that we're able to sit here and account for whatever liabilities the state of Illinois will put on us in order to solve their liability pension liability issues there. There's no way that we can know that. So that's an unanswered question. The last couple of years, the state has repeatedly floated ideas of keeping or reducing the revenues, different revenue streams that have historically flowed back to the city of Bloomington. So if part of their pension reform package is somehow reducing the revenues that come back to Bloomington, that will be a double whammy on us. It will cost us more to potentially fund the pensions that the state has yet to reveal to us what our liability is going to be. And we'll lose potentially revenue as they look for easier sources to solve their problems. We've just recently learned too from the infrastructure committee that we have $100 million plus sewer, underground infrastructure need that we're looking at. I mean, their figures range a little bit from 100 to 150 to 179. $100 million, I'm comfortable saying that's a lot of money. The last thing is, from a philosophical perspective, I have concerns that this $10 million proposal is simply to borrow more and spend more, increasing the debt load on Bloomington taxpayers. Why wouldn't there be at least consideration during our next budget cycle to reallocate money from elsewhere before asking citizens to assume this new tax burden? In conclusion, I favor streets. I'm even interested in looking at taking on bond debt, depending on the circumstances, much more specifics around taking on bond debt than we certainly have here associated with this proposal. But I'm also in favor of sound financial management. During the past 4 years, we've made tremendous progress with the management of our budget and a process that looks at the entire scope of the needs of the community. Not something that we look at in the middle of the year, outside of the normal budget process. Again, 4 years ago, prior to when I got here, there was a lot of disconnected, mismanaged spending that went on in this city. And what we've done the last 4 years is to develop a process. It's been acknowledged by the rating agencies. And again, I've shared a number of concerns and why in a few minutes I will vote against the bond proposal. So thank you.
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure if I'm 100% ready, but I'll give it a try. And I First let me say that I was, your recollection of our conversation is accurate. As a member of the committee, there were a couple of questions that I did ask initially. I recommended it for further discussion because I value the opinions of my fellow aldermen and to get a sense of where we are going. I think flexibility was very important to me because I did not get I did not want this to get to a point where a street project might seem cosmetic when we have a much more serious issue in terms of sewers, because I know those are, spread out all over the city, particularly in the downtown area. So in that sense, the flexibility was very important to me. I mean, I do understand we have some serious needs. Eventually, we're going to have to spend the money one way or another. I kind of struggle with that, but I know if we can, we're going to have to borrow the money. Is that correct? At some point or another, when this capital improvement plan comes together, we'll have to borrow it. So that's why I started leaning towards the project. But that said, I also, and I think you and I, when we spoke about this, everyone has a different way of making decisions. Some people move a little faster, and others need a little bit more time. I do understand the need for because to take advantage of bond ratings. But I also like to be able to explore what are the worst case scenarios. If economically, we were not to do so well financially with our sales tax receipts and everything like that. And once I have that information, I think I can, I can move ahead and make a decision and feel good whichever way we go, because nothing is for certain. And so that's, so hopefully we get that, but I'm not quite sure. I'd like to hear from others as well.
Okay. I think you'll hear from everybody. Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, our city does face tremendous financial pressures into the next decade and such. There is absolutely no question that we are looking at really could go over a financial cliff, as it were. And I, of course, am the only one to go on record as voting no to the budget precisely because we are not adequately funding our pensions and have, in fact, contributed less. Our contributions have gone down dollar-wise. And once I really understood that with some facts I got, then I was pretty appalled and concerned and did, go public with my decision and submitted that in written words and voiced my concerns on council as well. However, when it comes to this, I'm all about action, and that's something that we don't get a lot of in the city. I cannot count the number of projects. I could just name, we're supposed to be inventorying all of our vacant properties, our surplus properties. We have an empty fire station we haven't heard anything about for a very long time, or I haven't, and I may be remiss, maybe others have, and I've missed it. But we've lost the concept of action, of what our citizens are, pleading for constantly with their emails and their voice. And furthermore, the economic development incentive of infrastructure is tremendous. I've read many comments from companies, what they look at in a community, and they say the minute you get into a community, you look at infrastructure. To me, this is a critical need, and without this $10 million loan, this will not happen. Going into the next budget cycle for this is appalling to me. Another reason is the bond agencies, instead of resoundingly approving all that we're doing, are saying, hey, you better think a lot more about your budgets. I cited the bond agencies, the various ones, and what they said to us. They said, we want to see a big change in the way you fund your budgets and the way you look at capital projects, the way you plan your capital projects. So yes, we've made improvements, yes. And somebody mentioned mismanagement, and yes. So how much improvement? We went from total mismanagement to something different, and that's great. What it could have been, we don't know. But I do hope that we continue to look at the very serious financial conditions that could arise, the state pulling back on sales tax, all kinds of scenarios. Even our major employer not expanding, which is concerning, all of these things. And I hope we look at them and look at the spending on the non-critical issues in this city, of the non-critical hires. Where was everyone then? People, not firefighters, not public safety, but PR people, people who write, people who deal with the media. That's wonderful, and that's the direction we've gone. 1.2 million on 2 parks over the last couple of years. I don't fault anyone for their votes, nor do I criticize them. I'm just saying, let's get our priorities straight indeed. Streets, streets, streets. Pensions, and get some action on what people are asking for. And that's why I'm wholeheartedly supporting this, and I applaud Mayor Renner for stepping forward to, look at it, a new era here, because that's exactly what I think the voters elected him and some of the rest of us to do. Thank you.
Alderwoman McDade.
Thank you. I am going to ask some questions, and I don't expect necessarily to have answers to them right now. They're questions that I've asked in the past before, so I'll throw them out, and if others would like to take an opportunity to answer them, I'd appreciate it. I, like all of you, have listened to residents in this community and in our neighboring communities for at least, the 4.5 years that I've had the pleasure of being up here. And I know that streets are a key priority, and I am by all means an advocate of streets and street projects and infrastructure projects. And as the chair of an infrastructure committee, I'd like to think that that's something that, I am familiar with, and also as an advocate for economic development, I would like to think that I'm familiar with those issues as well. One of the challenges that I have with this proposal, and I've mentioned this before, and it coming to us outside of the budget cycle, is I don't really have a firm grasp on where we are right now year to date, and I don't have the information that we normally have throughout the budget process to take a look at this among the other issues that we have in the city. And so, here's a couple of the questions that I have. We hear that if we wait on this, that might cause us to increase property taxes. But how do we know that doing this now isn't necessarily going to cause us to raise property taxes? We haven't had that conversation yet. And we've had the conversation about the need for pensions. We've had conversations about the need for fire stations. We've had fire station improvements. We've had conversations about the needs in the police department. Those are not nice to have things. Those are have to have things, just like streets are a have to have thing. And so my concern is, when residents talk to me about the conditions of the streets, they also talk to me about the taxes and fees that they pay. And they tell me that they can't take anymore. And I know that I'm sitting up here with a group of people that has been very committed to keeping our property tax rate very flat over the last several years. And I know that many of us would like to be in that similar position this year. And I don't necessarily feel that I have data either way that indicates that this will or won't impact the decision that we're going to have to make around property taxes. The other thing that I don't have is a full understanding from all of our departments, again, many of them not nice to have, many of them have to have, about what their needs are going to be for the coming year and how this is or isn't going to allow us to act on the needs that they have. How do we know that this shouldn't be a $20 million bond to treat streets, fire station improvements, and something else that is just over the next hill in terms of a need that could be brought out and discussed during the budget process that we've worked so hard to refine over the last couple of years? So those are some questions that I have. They're not questions about whether I'm an advocate for streets. They're not questions about whether I'm an advocate for infrastructure improvements, whether I'm an advocate for jobs, whether I'm an advocate for action. I'm an advocate for all of those things. But I have some serious questions that I think, the people in this community, I have had people ask me these questions, and I don't yet have the data that I need to answer them. And I'm not trying to be a stall in the process, but what I am trying to be is diligent about what our property tax conversation looks like in a couple of months and what our budget conversation looks like in 6 months. And I'm just bringing about those questions because I think it's fair to have that balance in this conversation. I know the residents of Ward 5 asked me those questions in the same conversation that they asked me about our streets. Thank you.
Just a very quick clarification. I think the point about this is not being part of the budget cycle is that we do make amendments all the time, number one. Number two things have happened, right, since this budget was put together late last year and early part of the year. And that one is, of course, that bonds that, are more expensive or their interest rates are going up. The other is, of course, we have the election of a new mayor and new council. And those are very often things. It's certainly, even in the county, we would always have, after new elections, there were new priorities. And a lot of things happen. A lot of circumstances do change. I think that's the answer, to that. And I guess I would say if we know we have to do it, then, we floating $10 million doesn't preclude us in a year from floating another $10 million for something else, if that's we're floating around the costs. And again, the debt service on this is approximately $1 million a year. Those are some minor clarifications. And I don't think I was suggesting anybody that we're raising property taxes. I think probably we're all we want to, keep the firm line on it. There are other things we might need to do in the future. But anyway, just as quickly, let's go to Alderwoman Schmidt.
I also have some questions, and I'd like to ask them first just for some clarification. First of all, now we're talking about $10 million for 10 years, and so what is that annual payment? What is it?
About $1.1 million.
Okay, and I have been told that this is a backloaded bond.
No.
It's nothing yet. We haven't done it.
I understand that, but I have heard conversation and heard reports from this committee that this was a loan that would be backloaded. Is that correct? Or would it be ever structured that way?
There was a schedule of a debt service that was prepared early on that did reflect kind of a backloading of the particular bond.
Which, just for everybody's benefit, means that we are only paying, say, the interest at the beginning, and
very low payments up front, higher
balloon
payments in the back.
Right.
But that's not this at all.
No, that's not here, and I think that was provided Alderman Fazzini early on in the
confirmation. And I also appreciate the confirmation that we are no longer apparently talking about a street resurfacing plan, but we're talking about basically upstairs and downstairs, so to speak. Is that correct?
I think based on the conversation that I had with Alderman Mwilambwe, who wanted a little bit of flexibility, I think it's street resurfacing, but if there's a particular street that is a major artery and part of it needed to have some sewer work, we thought that the administration should have some flexibility in having some of that money dedicated towards sewers if that were necessary. So I think it was giving flexibility to the administration, which was the question that Alderman Mwilambwe had asked me, and I had talked to some of the other members of the committee and other council members, and nobody seemed to have an objection to that. But it's a street resurfacing program, but if in that process a block or some place needs some extra sewers in order to make it happen, then the administration has flexibility to allocate that.
Well, I will point out that all the older parts of town are having failure underneath the streets. And by default, it sounds as though we're going to continue our process of emergency repair for a large part of our community if we go at it at the way we're talking about now. Another question that I have, am I correct that the idea might be that we would need to spend $1.6 million a year to get our pensions up to where we really believe they need to be, and that could be as high as $2 to $3 million? Do I have those numbers right?
Well, I think based on the information we have right now, which is still subject to change, we will have to. It'll be mandatory to increase our pension contributions $1.6 million by the end of the year, and that's just to meet the minimum annual required contributions as we currently understand them. Then if we want to do more than that, that's where, $2.5, $3 million comes in to do more.
And so we have $1.1 million here, plus $1.6 million for pensions, plus anything else we want to do, but we're not going to raise any taxes or anything. I also have a question because I'm getting confused about the rating agencies. And their reaction to what we're doing. I'm reading the staff report. It says adoption of a 20-year comprehensive capital improvement plan is a critical characteristic of a highly rated municipality. And I've heard, I read that and it means to me that it should be a comprehensive plan, but I'm also hearing that if we don't move on the streets as one segment of that, we're going to lose ranking. Can we get some commentary on that?
Well, like you say, and as indicated, the rating agencies in the publications do recommend a very comprehensive capital improvement program, and we are even looking at a 20-year. We put the priority on sewer and stormwater because those are underground. We're also working now to try and complete by next year kind of a water master plan. We have a lot more elements of a water master plan, but we don't have that complete master plan. I think more of the emphasis has been shifted to the Southwest well field, which is about an $8 to $10 million project. Ultimately, I think we're putting the pieces together, but when everything is all said and done, we'll not only have what the needs are long term, but then we have to work on the financing plan. What are the projected revenues? What are the expenditures? How much of that is pay-as-you-go? How much would be a borrowing? How much should come in from dedicated fees or other revenue sources?
Okay, thank you. Well, I would like to just make a couple of comments and wrap it up and pass it along here. I did write to my email list, most of whom are my constituents, and express my concern about supporting this at this time. And this is not about being pro-street or anti-street. This is about considering the entire process and the various ways in which we might be reaching into a little bit more deeply into our citizens' pockets, because it is our collective money we're spending. Overwhelmingly, people told me that they don't run their own lives this way without looking at all of their expenses, and asked for caution. I had other people who recommended that we be a little bit more aggressive, but put it in the context of everything that we have to pay for so that we know where the money's coming from, and we have that community conversation about all of our priorities. And I at this point, as a one-off, I cannot support this. I think we have a council process that we have committed ourselves to that's working very well for us. And this feels like we've taken one thing off of what I see as a 24-item action list and said, we're going to do this one, and I don't know what we're going to do with the rest of them. So I'm very uncomfortable with this, the way it's being presented now. Like Alderman Sage, I can get to the point where this could be an option, but not the way it's presented now.
Alderman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a member of the Admin and Finance Committee, I have appreciated these discussions, and I definitely have enjoyed hearing from other aldermen on this issue. As I knocked on doors during the campaign very recently, everybody I talked to, what are you going to do about the streets? They don't want to hear about my long-term visioning for what Bloomington looks like. They're not interested to hear, what I think that, we should do with an undeveloped property. They're more interested to know, I have a pothole that's been sitting here for several years and has not been addressed. What are you going to do about that? And this is an option that we have to do something about those kind of issues. And when we look at how governments can generate revenue, we see taxes, we see fees, we see growing economic development, and we see bond issuances. And I'm not ready to walk down the conversation of talking about raising taxes to address this issue. I don't think fees would cover what we need to do here for the scope of the project. Economic development here is the key. I see my role as an alderman is to advocate and invest in our city's future. If I'm a business owner looking to invest in a community, if I have money, jobs that I want to create, am I going to spend money, invest my time, my future, my business in a city that has deteriorating streets that's not being taken care of? Am I going to put my time and effort into a community that has a number of challenges? I'm not disputing the fact that we have sewer issues coming our way, and this is the first I'm hearing of allocating some of the money towards sewers. I'm okay with that. I think we're all on board that we have genuine issues. This, to me, creates value. We're creating opportunities for business owners to come to this community and be successful. We're creating jobs for people to spend money here. We are making the right decisions to expand our tax base. This can potentially end up growing our local economy, which isn't what we ultimately want to do. So I definitely am in favor of this. I've thought about, we've gone back and forth at a couple of different events talking about potentially doing more than the $10 million. I'm not opposed to that idea, but I think 10 million is a good place to start. We have the opportunity now with interest rates being so low. I'm on board. Let's get aggressive with streets. Let's be real about our infrastructure challenges and start to address them.
Alderman Fazzini.
Phase one. That's all this is. It's phase one. We have over $200 million of needs that previous city councils have dumped in our lap. And I don't know how much over 200 million, but it's a lot. And we have to fix it. And we're not going to do it by raising taxes $200 million, and we're not going to do it by raising fees $200 million. If you think that, you're wrong. It ain't going to happen. We have four main income sources. They're taxes, fees, bonds, and economic development. I'd like to avoid taxes and fees as long as possible. One way to do that is to issue bonds if we have the capacity to repay them, and our city manager tells us we have that capacity with this. We also have some innovative bond issuances that will be coming back to you in the next 2 to 3 months from the Finance Committee. That'll help with our $200 million, and it'll help with our pensions. We didn't get to 50% pension funding without previous city councils taking inaction. We didn't get to our streets being in the condition they are without our previous city councils from 1994 to 2004 spending $600,000 a year only, or from 2004 to 2009 spending $1.4 million a year. We got here because our previous city councils didn't do what they needed to do. Inaction. I think we have the capacity to repay this, and if I'm not mistaken, Patty, if we do $10 million today and pay it back over 10 years, between 3 and 4 years from now, we'll be right back at $80 million, which our city has right now. Does that sound right? Yes. So it'll only take us 3 years plus to get back to where we are now. But I'm not saying that's all we're going to do. We're probably going to do a lot more. And it's going to come from bonds so that we don't have to tax people or raise their fees.
Okay.
We need to do this.
Alderman Fruin, last but not least.
Thank you, Mayor. I was slow to put my light on because I was going to let the written word that I shared with everybody today speak, but I don't want to be the only one not speaking. So we have talked about road resurfacing for a long, long time. We've made adjustments in our budgets. And when we talk about road resurfacing, we talk about how it matches up with other priorities. This is one night. This is Monday night. This is one topic. But we all know that in the course of 2013, we're going to be here many more Monday nights, and we're going to have many more big ticket items, and we're going to have many more challenges about whether we're going to raise fees, raise the property tax, which we've held flat for 4 years, et cetera, et cetera. Several people made reference to the campaign this past season, which half of us ran in the campaign, and I put that in my comments that one of the comments made to ourselves was, will you issue new bond debt to pay for infrastructure needs? And my answer at that time was that I would not issue new bond debt to pay for infrastructure needs, but that I would replace expiring bond debt with bond debt to allocate for road resurfacing. I hope I'm making that clear. So I'm going to hold to that. It's not a pledge, it's not a promise, but it's a statement I made to several people in the spring that I would not add to our bond debt, and I intend to honor that. I guess if I was a politician, I could waver from that, but tonight I'm a public servant, and I'm going to honor that. And what I'm saying is not in any way, shape, or form an opinion against or a position against street resurfacing, because I think it's very vital. But as we've all said, we've got a couple dozen vital big ticket items that we need to address. And I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I guess at this point, we're way out of time, but obviously this was critical. And we do have a motion on the floor. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Mwilambwe.
Okay, I'm going to say yes. I think the process could be improved, but I'll just go with yes.
Alderman Stern.
Aye.
Alderman McDade.
No.
Alderman Schmidt.
No.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
No.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
No.
Okay. No, it passes 5-4, and let's move on to the fiscal year 2014 action agenda. And do I have a motion to approve so we can move on? Do I have a motion? Anybody? Who am I?
So moved.
Okay. Okay. Moved by Alderman McDade.
Second.
Second by Alderman Mwilambwe. All right. And I will turn it over to City Manager David Hales.
Mayor and Council, the revised list you have tonight, and I do want to pay particular attention to the revised addendum. For item 22 and 23, that should read Police or Fire Department Strategic Plan and Police Department 2012 to 2015 Strategic Plan. I think the other thing we would want to add to this, because of the previous vote, is that issuance of the $10 million bond issue. I was anticipating that decision would be made and that could be added to this, if it passed. I do want to point out that basically this action plan is something that's realistic. It's doable. These are things that we have underway. Many of them are 99% complete, but others are yet to be transpire. This is an action plan that is very specific on what you expect city manager and city staff to bring to you. It does not necessarily, and I think if we had another action plan, it would be, what do you, the council, want to act on within, a similar time period. So we did go back and because this is, I think, as has been discussed in the past, this is kind of the goals, the objectives you're holding the city manager and the city staff to complete during the current fiscal year. And of course, that's how we try to address and specify, as indicated, some of these master plans, to complete and present that to the council. So once again, this is an action plan for staff to work, spend, in some cases, some significant resources, like in the case of the sewer stormwater master plan, to bring that plan to you. But then it is up to the council to spend whatever time you feel appropriate before acting on, approving it, and so forth. So with that, there's, other than those two changes, 22, 23, and I'd also recommend that whatever the motion is made, that the motion also include adding item 25, and that would be, preparation of that $10 million bond issue, because there will be some staff time in working through that to bring that back for formal approval of the council. I'd be happy to answer any questions council might have on this.
Just in terms of procedure, the motion and second was for what you presented. Do we need to have an amendment?
Only if you wanted to add that, and again,
at this point, it's made.
We're moving ahead with that, just with that vote. But okay. If you just want to hold to that motion, we'll have those 24 items plus, moving ahead with the bond issue.
Okay. All right. Do we have, who'd like to, we've got, well, in terms of the time we've allocated to this, we've got about 11 minutes left. So who would like to speak? Anybody? Okay. Well then, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Alderman Mwilambwe. Alderman Stern.
Aye.
Alderman McDade. Yes. Alderman Schmidt.
Yes.
Alderman Black.
Yes.
Alderman Fazzini.
Yes.
Alderman Fruin.
Yes.
Alderman Lauer.
Yes.
Alderman Sage.
Yes.
Okay. Our city manager, report, discussion.
Mayor, don't have anything tonight to share with the council. Thank you.
Okay. And I will, I'll be brief as well. And these are actually two invitations to everybody on the council. First of all, if you'd like to march with, he left, Mayor Chris Coos. He was here. We're going to go through the Labor Day Parade jointly with the town of Normal. So if you would like to join us, please let me know. And I'm not sure where we meet, but we usually meet right by the front and center building. And so I'll give you more information, but if you'd let me know, we will proceed with the parade. In addition to that, something that Alderman Fazzini got me roped into, I would have tickets for the Normal Corn Belters game on August 20th, 7 p.m. If you'd like to join us, I have them. If you want to bring a significant other, as long as I have the tickets available, you're certainly welcome. And the thing that he roped me into, even though I really am awful at this and have a shoulder problem, I'm supposed to throw out the first pitch. So you can see me really look like a total unmitigated idiot. So, and there may be several people who are very happy to do that tonight. So if you want them, I have this along with me. So Alderman's comments. Alderman Fazzini.
Is that the night that the police and the fire from both towns are going to be playing each other?
Do we know on that?
I'm not sure.
RT, do we know anything about that? Where the we had arranged for the Normal police and the Bloomington police to compete with the firefighters, Normal firefighters and Bloomington firefighters. So we didn't want Bloomington versus Normal. We wanted both communities. Did we get any word on that, RT? Okay. Okay, but that's
we'll give everybody a date as soon as we have it.
Okay, we'll give everyone a date. Sorry,
intergovernmental cooperation.
We wanted to demonstrate intergovernmental cooperation, absolutely. And anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Let's start with Alderman Fruin. Since I often end with you, let's start with you now.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm going to have a chance to say this first, and I'll give David and Todd and Tracy or anybody else a chance to clean it up. But tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, Holiday Inn on Empire across from the airport, there will be a resident-initiated meeting just to have some discussion about the East Side Highway. I think I've tried to copy the council and some of the emails the last couple weeks to make sure that they are included. Again, this is resident-driven. It's primarily driven by people in Eagle View, Harvest Point, and the Grove, which are the three subdivisions that are primarily impacted by a potential freeway. In addition to the three aldermen that represent that area, county board members Chuck Erickson and Benjamin Owens will be there. We've invited the city manager, the mayor, the county administrator, and the county chair. Not sure who will be there, but again, this is resident-driven. It's my understanding that the county has published a public meeting notice. It's my understanding that the city chose not to because of procedures and because it's not a city-called meeting. So I think Todd has given us enough, quote, warnings about making sure we don't violate the Open Meetings Act. And so I'll be on our good behavior tomorrow for whoever wants to attend and the number of people that can participate. The genesis of this is actually that residents have been given many opportunities over a couple years to listen to Clark Dietz' presentations out at Normal Community and to hear the engineering perspective. And I don't think the residents have really felt like they've had a chance to interact much with their aldermen, their county board reps, or other city or county officials. So that's the purpose of this thing. Not sure how it'll fly, but we are responsive to the neighbors who want this, and so I intend to be there, and I encourage others to attend and be on your good behavior as far as participation. So again, I give the opportunity to David or Todd or Tracy if they want to clean that up a little bit, but that's the way I understand it. So that's what I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And let's see, we'll go from this way. Alderwoman McDade and then Alderwoman Stearns.
Okay, so I just wanted to bring forward a topic that I've heard a little bit about. There's a fly up here. And I'm not necessarily, I'm bringing this up. So, and chewing a fly. It's okay. You can if you want. But what's that? Right. So, and I'm not expressing a position on this topic, but I do know that I've received a lot of emails and some phone calls, and I've had people stop me and talk to me a little bit about this proposed soccer complex and community center. I know from some people in town that there's scheduled to be a large press conference about this topic tomorrow. And my question is, what is the city of Bloomington doing to help, shape, provide input, provide feedback? That doesn't, please don't confuse that with saying, what is the city of Bloomington doing to support this? But, there's a clear need and in that we know that the airport property will be no longer available. That's been documented. There's a clear desire on the part of the many, many residents that have contacted us, and I've reviewed the packet. There are many, many letters of support in the packet as well. There is, some interest, some level of interest from schools, universities, other communities, and so on. And so all I'm saying, I'm not advocating for this, but I want to be very clear and say that if we have a position on this, we should be providing that position. We should probably be helping to shape, if this isn't going to be something that we're interested in participating in, maybe we can shape this into something we'd be interested in participating in, because I don't know that the need's going to go away. Whether that means other people have to be at the table, whether that means there needs to be a different set of private people at the table, I don't begin to know. But I guess if this was like a sporting event, I'd be wondering who has the ball at this point, because it sort of just feels like we're not being really active in terms of providing feedback. We're not necessarily at the table on this one. And I've seen these things before, and sometimes then some people assume that means that we're supportive of something. Okay, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is some people get very frustrated when they put a lot of work into something and there's not a lot of feedback provided, and then they come and present the idea, and lo and behold, we all of a sudden have a lot of feedback to provide. So I don't know. I've not been a part of all of your conversations you've had with people. I'm sure there's 10 different opinions up here. I'm not necessarily even interested in that conversation. I'm interested in what are we doing to help. We are a partner whether we like it or not. So what are we doing to partner in whatever way we can on this one, because it's a need in our community and it's not going to change.
If I could just clarify the question. We're a partner in?
Well, we are a partner in the fact that we're a partner in the future of the community when it comes to recreation. Whatever that means, I'm not signing us up for anything. I'm just saying we know we have a lot of children in this community that play a lot of soccer in this community, and we know we have some fields that won't be available for them to play on in a couple of years. So as public servants, we are a partner in solving that problem, whichever solution to that problem we choose. And I'm not necessarily saying we have to pick the one that's being proposed at the moment, but to simply turn away from it and say, nope, not our problem, probably won't satisfy the many residents of this community that have already contacted us and asked us to think about this. So I'm just asking, fine if the answer is no, let's be upfront about it. Let's understand the problem's not going to go away. So what feedback are we providing to help shape this into something that'll address the problem? There are hundreds of ways to solve it. I'm just feeling like I'm not hearing that we're being an active partner on this.
Just to give, I think that's I don't think the answer is no, but just in terms of the meetings that I've had, I had one meeting where the people approached me a couple months ago, and then one joint meeting with Chris Coos. It's a private group that's trying to get public money, and I think that's the bottom line. It doesn't mean that there aren't other possibilities, but I suggested that they go get a referendum, that they put it on the March primary and make their case to the citizens that why they should have a 1/4 cent tax increase, and that I don't think they were interested in that at that point. But at this point, anybody that has a First Amendment right to go out and say, yeah, I would like a 1/4 cent sales tax for fill in the blank. At this point, we haven't been involved. They'd have a press conference. and people are emailing us, but there is no proposal, and we have yet to vet it. It's not even at all on our radar screen in terms of the action item, any of the action list or other priorities. So, if the council decides we want to have a meeting on this at some point, that's fine, but I think that's the short answer to that.
Okay, but and I'm sorry if I didn't frame it properly, but the bottom line is, I understand what you're saying, but the bottom line is, we have soccer fields that are going offline, and people expect us to step up to the plate whether we want to or not, and so we can shape. That's exactly what I'm saying. In essence, if we don't like the conversation that's happening right now, that's fine. Let's just be a part of convening another conversation about it, or what have you. There are definitely units that we all work with that are involved in this conversation. Bloomington Normal Convention and Visitors Bureau and Sports Commission being one, EDC being another. They're involved in this conversation. Sure. And so that's my point of view. I'd like to see us take a solution-oriented approach to this. That's all.
I think I have been having lots of conversations with Chris Coos about it. It would probably have to be Bloomington and Normal coming together, and that's another alternative. But it may be that this one has to not be approved by either of the councils before we then move to the next step. So I don't know what that will be. That's just a prediction, frankly, as a political scientist. I don't know what's going to happen. But let's see, we had Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you. Just an update on the Vietnam Memorial at Miller Park. We had a meeting with David and Terry. And Terry Edmonds, who's been intimately involved in this over the years, and we're moving forward to highlight the names that are fading badly. That seems to be the best solution. We talked with Pontiac Granite. We all sat down. I looked at examples of highlighted memorials, and I think that we're going to have a very improved in terms of its appearance. And we're certainly not trying to change the memorial at all, but only to make sure that those names do not, fade and become unreadable. And the other thing is to replace the bronze flame that is missing, and I didn't know what it was, but it's gone, and we're going to make it better and get one that's as similar as we can to the original. Of course, Terry remembers that. I have got the VFW involved, of which I am an auxiliary member, and and they're very excited about it. We think we're going to be able to do it by Veterans Day. Is that right, David? David?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. And that way we can have some kind of not a rededication, but some kind of at least a recognition of the enhancement of the memorial. So I'm very excited about that. And anyone is more than welcome to email me and certainly be a part of the ceremony when it happens. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we will be publishing that. Absolutely. Alderman Lauer, and I believe I have an addition.
Just wanted to answer Jennifer's question a little bit, maybe. I have been a little bit more proactive probably than most on that soccer complex and the YMCA. It is the opinion of most of my constituents that should be and remain a private entity with private funding. However, we do have facilities, public parks, that are underutilized and may be utilized in that manner. I've even got private developers offering open space that's currently being mowed by them but not being used, and it's underutilized. It appears to me, and many of my constituents as well, that it would be a boon to economic development and enterprise if we kept most of that activity at different locations around town rather than investing $30 million. If they want to provide $30 million and do something privately, that's their business. But as far as the town is concerned, I think we've got facilities that we could provide without any additional expense and probably help the city along in the process. So just a look from Ward 1.
And last but not least, Alderwoman Schmidt.
I also wanted to comment on this. What I heard you say, Jennifer, is not necessarily to respond to the proposal that's been put out there, but to be proactive about it. And I'm thinking exactly what you're talking about. I have heard exactly the same thing. Not a lot of interest in this, and and I appreciate that. But we do have the capacity as a community to come together and say, we heard you. And I think it behooves us to do that and to intentionally and proactively go out and do some linkage with the county and the town of Normal and say, we have a need. We probably have already the facilities. How do we make this happen at the least cost to everybody? So I would strongly urge us to do that. I think it's a great idea.
And just to clarify, those conversations have been going on. It's just when I talked to Chris Coos, we've talked about this. In the short run, the supporters of this seem to be pretty fixed in focusing on this $32 million project. And so, but, right. So we will, I'm sure, keep that conversation going. Okay, let's see. To bring my, we have no executive session tonight. Oh, at this point, we just, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Stearns. Is there a second? Well, second by Alderwoman Schmidt. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, we're adjourned.
I think we ought to put it on Bill Brady's $750,000 park.
There's a thought.
I don't think that's what he wanted.